Our theme this month is living in spiritual integrity. And today's topic is aligning with our spiritual nature. Last week I talked about our sacred self and the realization that each of us has one to be recognized, to be accepted, and to be utilized. And as Wayne Dyer expressed frequently in his time with us here on planet Earth, we are imbued with a divine energy, the power of which permeates our entire being. And it permits us to perform every function in the vast repertoire of human thoughts and behaviors. Recognizing, accepting, and utilizing that is another way of aligning with our spiritual nature. But before that, I want to finish what I started last week when I talked about the fact that each one of us is here for a reason, here on planet Earth, here in this country, here on this island, here in this room. Last Sunday, I shared with you a list of 9 experiences that your spiritual self finds both a sacred quest and a life challenge in this plane of existence as you work at developing a heightened self-awareness. And for those of you who were not here last week, you'll be able to go on YouTube the first of next month and hear that talk on your sacred self and your sacred self. And those first 9 are listed in that talk. So here are the other 4. Number 10, you choose to live authentically. As you align with your spiritual nature, you no longer have any difficulty with being yourself. Universal truth and heightened awareness become the norm from which you express yourself. This is the authentic I am what I am concept. Some of you may remember that Roy Sakuma, who was here on island a few weeks ago with his annual Waikoloa Ukulele Festival, immortalized that phrase years ago. He didn't invent it, but he immortalized it when he wrote a song for children of our islands. And the words in the chorus in that song go like this: I am what I am, I'll be what I'll be. Look, can't you see that it's me, all of me? I still get chicken skin every time I speak or sing those words. But it's because he wrote them with something very particular in mind for children who had not yet had an opportunity to know that about themselves. And it's still popular, it's still sung here in the islands. So living authentically means accepting ourselves, knowing that our behaviors from the past were part of us then, had great lessons built into them, and gave us the opportunity to transcend them, that is, to go beyond or rise above them. Here's number 11 in that list of heightened awareness. You become less judgmental and more forgiving. Heightened self-awareness erases our judgmental tendencies. We begin seeing that awareness in judging others erases not just defining others, but points out to us that we have been defining ourselves as we judge others. And so there is the opportunity to let go of that. So judging others does not define them. It defines us. Consequently, we become less inclined to judge anyone or anything. And Carl Jung, whose name some of you may recognize, was a psychiatrist back in the mid-19th century. Carl Jung put it this way. He said, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. That was a very kind way of saying everything that irritates us about somebody else is because it exists within us, or we wouldn't even notice it. Well, as the realization of this non-judgment breaks upon us, forgiveness becomes easy. Forgiving ourselves as well as forgiving others. The absence of judgment and the ability to forgive brings new serenity into our lives. One might even call that aligning with our spiritual nature. When you really stop to think about what percentage of your day or your week is spent in judging others or yourself, and you're ready to release that, you're going to find a lot of additional time to do some really positive, fun things. And don't you know, in the process, your spiritual nature, your integrity is aligning itself in a very positive way. Every cell in your body is acting differently as you release those judgmental tendencies. So here's number 12 in the list of 14. You shift from acquiring to sharing. In this increasingly heightened state of awareness and alignment, we expand our personal desires to how we can now demonstrate our desire to serve others. Dr. Albert Schweitzer, who was a medical doctor, a theologian, he was also a very accomplished musician. And he was the winner of the Nobel Peace Prize in 1952. Dr. Schweitzer had this to say about service. He said, every person has to seek in his or her own way to make one's own self more noble and to realize one's own true worth. You must give some time as well to your fellow man. Even if it's a little thing, do something for those who have need of help. Something for which you get no pay, but the privilege of doing it. The privilege of doing it. For remember, you do not live in this world alone. Your brothers and sisters are here too. I might add to that, a measure of spiritual integrity is aligning with our spiritual nature, which recognizes that we don't live in a world of our own. We are surrounded by humankind. How we define our place in it, our purpose in it, and our contribution to it is by our interaction with it. So now here's number 13. You experience bliss as a natural state. Whew, wow. Bliss. Such a lovely word, but what does it really mean? Well, the dictionary gives us a wide range of possibilities. Joy, pleasure, delight, happiness, gladness, ecstasy, euphoria, elation. It kind of builds there from rather mundane to, whoa, euphoria. Wayne Dyer is a bit more down to earth in his description of bliss. He likens it to an inner peaceful knowing, kind of like a warm shower running inside of you. It just feels good. He calls it a state of grace and self-sufficiency. It's connectedness to God. a connectedness to the universal truth. Your bliss, he reminds us, provides us with the sense that we are on purpose. He also suggests that bliss is a natural state, and it can be accessed without the assistance of any external substances. I thought he put that so tactfully. And number 14, you become a waking dreamer. What a lovely possibility this brings when we realize that the highest and best thoughts we have about who and what we would like to be, have, do, and be successful at are possible. They're not just what we call pipe dreams. With this realization, we can express our highest and best means and what they mean. We can express ourselves in real time, which is bringing our sacred self from a cloaked thought or idea, a dream, into the actions of our daily lives. You know, this is one of the things that I like most about so much of what Disney has done with their Imagineers. A wish is a dream your heart makes was one of their original and still powerful statements. And when you look at what Disney has made available to children of all ages over decades now, over 60 years, you come to realize that what might have been dreams at one point actually fly over your head, walk beside you, float down a river. There's so much going on in the minds of Imagineers. And you've heard me say before, every one of us can be an Imagineer and bring it into real time, just like I'm talking about right here. So now let's go back to the statement I started this talk with, so that here on earth, we are all imbued with a divine energy, the power of which actually permeates our entire being and allows us to perform every function in the vast repertoire of human thoughts and behaviors. Recognizing, accepting, and utilizing that is a major way of aligning with our spiritual nature. And without a pause, of course, Dr. Phil would phrase the famous question to you, how's that working for you? Dyer describes this divine energy as having two aspects. The outer, which assesses and performs the things that keep our physical bodies alive. You know, things like your heart beating, your lungs inflating, your senses functioning, your liver working, things like that, which we seldom think of until or unless they malfunction. But the inner aspect of our divine energy is what he describes as a divine light within us. And when we discover this sacred self, this spiritual nature, we awaken our inner energy and we joyfully let that guide our lives. Not only mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, but also physically, because it's all blended together. So here is his take on our spiritual nature. Spirituality, being spiritual, is best described as an attitude toward God and the inner journey of enlightenment. He views that as expanding our God-like qualities of love, forgiveness, kindness, and bliss within ourselves. He says spirituality is not dogma or rules. It's light and joy and focuses on the experience of love and inner bliss, and then radiates those qualities outward from us. He says that the journey to discovering your sacred self is your sacred quest. To me, that's another way of saying aligning with your spiritual nature. You see, we don't have to create a spiritual nature. It comes with a package. It came with you when you arrived here. It awaits our attention, our acceptance, and our actions to direct it. Sogyal Rinpoche, in his classic book, The Tibetan Book of Living and Dying, and I know many of you are familiar with this. This has been one of our textbooks in the past, in our ministerial training. The Tibetan Book of Living and Dying. In this book, he puts it this way: enlightenment is real, and each of us, whoever we are, can, in the right circumstances and with the right training, realize the nature of mind, and so know in us what is deathless and eternally pure. Eternally pure. Isn't that a lovely phrase? First time I've ever heard that. This is the promise of all the mystical traditions of the world. It has been fulfilled and is being fulfilled in countless thousands of lives. So, why not you? Why not me? Why not align with universal spiritual nature? Why not heighten your spiritual awareness? Why not tap into your divine energy? Why not be enlightened? Why not be the change you wish to see? You and I can, you know. It's not a difficult or arduous journey. Because each day in our spiritual practice, we can frame our intentions, like we talked about earlier this morning during Standing in the Light. We can frame our words and our trust with the recognition, unification, realization, acceptance of our spiritual nature, our spiritual self, and then simply release that, which is turning that over to Spirit to act on it as we have directed. We can bring our sacred self to the forefront of our awareness, and we can support our own spiritual essence. Because our spiritual essence is a really big deal. It's real. Take the opportunity daily to know it, to love it, to cherish it. Once you do that, you will never want to go back to any way of living that is inconsistent with your divine, though invisible, self. Well, there's no coincidence that the words you are hearing here this morning are similar to the words written and spoken in the class we now are teaching on Tuesday afternoons on the principles of successful living. In some respects, it may seem like we're living in two worlds. One, the physical, sometimes the stark world around us, and two, the inner, that is invisible to our eyeballs, but sacred, spiritual, divine, eternal universe. Isn't that just a BGO? For those of you who haven't heard that before, or those of you who have forgotten what it stands for, BGO is a blinding glimpse of the obvious. BGO. We indeed are presently present in a material world, a physical world. And yet, we have this knowing, this curiosity, this drive to know more. Not only about the physical world, the solar system, perhaps even the galaxy, but also the curiosity, the drive, the knowing that behind, within, and around the physical is something more. The inner self, residing in each of us and expressing in an endless array of forms. And first, we're called to understand how that works within us, individually, before we can address how it works individually in billions of others who call planet Earth their current home, too. The good news regarding that is that when we understand the magnificence of ourselves, the rest is slam dunk by comparison. So stay tuned for next week's talk on living with spiritual integrity. And so it is.